So we're here at Rock City Mushrooms. I'm with Ben, and just want to kind of hear your story with mushrooms. Yeah. So everyone always is like, how'd you first get into it? So what was your first kind of pull into the fungal world?
Yeah, I was studying urban design at school in college, and I got really into urban agriculture. And I was like really into greens. I was into like hydroponics, aquaponics, like indoor stuff. And I really liked the idea of like high density farming, especially in an urban setting. And so I took a class at NYU where I was studying an urban farming class. It was like just kind of education, working on an educational farm, learning how stuff's done. And actually we had a speaker come in who's Andrew Carter from Smallhold, actually, and he talked about what they were doing, and I was like amazed by kind of, I hadn't really thought about mushrooms too much before, and a lot of the problems that I had with greens was I didn't really like the light intensivity of it. It felt really energy intensive, and like for the most part mushrooms are pretty passive, and I loved that, you know, I was living in New York City, like there's so much trash in New York City, and for me one of the cool things about mushrooms was that they will eat, you know, trash. Which, you know, it's not trash to them, but yeah, so that's kind of what got me interested, and there I started like a small kind of grow space, actually in the office of my professor. Cool. So we were growing in a Martha, like a little grow tent with a humidifier, and then we kind of upped things, and people got really interested, and we started a mycology club at NYU, which was really exciting. And you know, at school they had just been doing things in the biology department with like yeast, but there was no real, you know, there's no macrofungi, there are no other things, so it was cool. And then we started doing things with the ecology department, getting speakers in. So that's kind of how it started, and now I'm growing them on a daily basis.
Yeah, so now you're on a commercial farm, and what's it like kind of bringing your passion onto here, and how's that been?
It's been fun. I kind of like always wanted to run a mushroom farm to, you know, a certain extent, and I'm definitely doing all the production and most of the sales, so it's been good, and it's like amazing to come in and like harvest mushrooms every day and set stuff out. It's like you're kind of like your children, a room full of you know, all these mushrooms that you've seen, you know, as little babies to eating them. Yeah.
So what's a typical day kind of look like when you come in? What's your typical flow?
Yeah, so a lot of times I'll come in, kind of clean up anything that might have fallen off the racks, or just if there's any surprises, deal with them there. And then I usually harvest in the morning, and then we'll harvest, toss everything in the cooler, clean up all the old blocks, so either transfer them over to like a second fruit stage, or compost them. And then once the racks are cleaned off, we'll set out new stuff that might go out. So try to limit set out everything 2 days of the week, so it's just we know exactly when stuff goes out. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, a lot of like moving stuff around, keeping the flow of mushrooms alive and healthy. Yeah. Is there a piece of mushroom farming that you're like, oh, this part always is awesome, like that this like you really like and feels good?
Yeah, I mean it's really gratifying to see, you know, like a great flush of beautiful mushrooms. But that's kind of obvious. Maybe something that's like a little less is like, when you compost stuff, or when like you cut a bag weird or something falls and you don't notice it and the mushrooms still grow really nicely is like such a cool moment. And like seeing the resiliency of the crop is pretty cool. And it kind of makes me feel obsolete sometimes. It's like, do I really even need to be here if they're just going to grow?
Yeah, you're like, you guys got this. I'll just...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a nice thing about farming too, is like, I feel like some things can be harder for a green farmer. I feel like I have it pretty easy as a mushroom farmer. I don't have to be out in the sun all day. Like I really feel for everyone who's working in the hot summer days, and like it's basically AC air conditioned in here. But yeah.
Nice. Any parts of the job or of farming, of mushroom farming, that you're like, oh man, this is always like, I got to gear up mentally for this part of the process?
Yeah. The shiitake blocks are always, I love shiitake mushrooms, don't get me wrong. They grow really nicely. But sometimes like working with the shiitake, you get like gnats. Also debagging the shiitake can be really messy. I have like even these pants, it's totally stained with like shiitake juice. And your skin too will stain sometimes. So that's messy. But it's not always bad to get a little messy, and but yeah.
I like how you're like eyeing the shiitakes, like, I don't want to talk dirty about you in front of you, but keep growing.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. What would you say to people that, you know, maybe are in that similar place of feeling really passionate about fungi, excited about fungi, a little bit exposed, and thinking about getting into mushroom farming or growing on a commercial scale? Is it something you recommend? Any words of advice or anything like that?
I would say start small and just kind of get a feel for like what it's like to grow like 5 to 10 blocks. I mean, start with one and get a feel. But for me, I think a lot of how I learned was like going out into where I was. So in New York City, I kind of went out and saw what people were doing there, and kind of like getting a sense for what your immediate community is like, and then also like the greater community and what people are doing, to learn, to see if, you know, do I want to do farming? Do I want to do, I don't know, maybe you want to cook mushrooms instead of grow them, or so find what's really interesting, or maybe you want to create substrate, or so figure out what part of the process has been, you know, is meaningful to you, and really hone in on that, I guess. Yeah.
Did you find the mushroom community welcoming of that like exploration? And
yeah, I think it's been, you know, it's like you meet a mushroom person, and it's like you automatically have a connection with them, and like there's like a certain level of understanding, I think, that all, you know, mycophiles have with each other. So yeah, definitely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Anything else you want to add in? The beginnings of your mushroom journey, and where you like maybe imagine it going?
Yeah, I mean, it's been awesome. Like working here, you know, all due respects for everyone who was working on it up until when I came, but it was definitely like kind of hard. There were a lot of like old racks, and so it's been nice to like really kind of see change as I've progressed. And yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity at Rock City. We have, you know, a giant pile of compost, and a lot of times, you know, composted blocks don't get used. They just like kind of get thrown out, and I think in the future it will be cool to see kind of like the full circle, the way that the blocks can then be turned into really healthy soil, which will be super cool. So that's to come. And our compost is cooking, but you know, with time, I think maybe next year there'll be some nice fertile beds from the help of our blocks. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm so curious about the like potential systems. Like at the beginning, you're talking about how mushrooms eat trash and waste products, and just the potential, like so much substrate flowing out, and what that could be, breaking down and consuming. That's just out there.
Yeah, and it would be cool to, we buy in all of our substrate now, but it would be really great to kind of supplement that buying in with some of our own inoculated blocks. Mm-hmm. So, hopefully in the future we don't have a lab yet, but we've been thinking about it. So hopefully get a little of that in, and we can, do some of our own strains, maybe make some grow kits. There's so much stuff you can do once you have a lab space. And even if you don't have a lab space, I guess there's still tons of stuff you can do. So
yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing some of your story, Ben.
No problem. My pleasure.
It's fun to see the farm that you're tending.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Glad to have you.
Yeah. Thanks.